Hello and welcome back to Burn Pile. This is episode 2, and we got a little feedback about the first episode. I got a little feedback. Of course, it's a new podcast. Sent it to my friends and family, and I got 2 interesting bits of feedback from someone. Someone said the first thing they had to say, which I agree with. They said too many ums. They said, hey, there's too many ums. And I think that's right. I definitely agree with that. Unquestionably, it's great feedback. Too many ums. You don't want to be listening to a podcast and you hear um and then and I'm not going to lie and say that it's not going to happen anymore, but I'm aware of it. I'm going to be working on it. The thing is, a lot of people, they edit out their ums, especially when they're doing a solo YouTube or a solo podcast. They just go in and they edit out all their ums, and I don't want to do that. Right now, this podcast doesn't have any guests, but eventually it probably will. And I really like when there's guests for things to be unedited. And I also really like just hitting record on OBS and uploading. I really don't want to do editing. I just think it's a lot purer and a lot better when there isn't editing. And if I know there isn't editing, it makes me talk in a certain way, and I really like that. So you're going to hear some ums. It's just what it is. I'm going to work on it, but there's going to be some ums still. And now the other bit of feedback, which I really didn't agree with, is the same person didn't like the silences, the long silences. Now, I've got to disagree with that. Let me tell you why the silences are good. All right? So back when I was a boy, I would listen on the AM radio to Glenn Beck. This is back like, I don't know, 2003, 4, 5, those years. And I grew up about an hour outside of Philadelphia. And before he was even a national figure, he was on the local Philadelphia affiliate. I believe that's where he got his start in radio. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that was at the very least a big part of his early career. So I was there, and he would do these really, really long, dramatic pauses. And you would think it was radio dead air. I'm sure in like Radio 101, when you're just learning the ropes to be a broadcaster, they tell you you can't have these long silences. So I'm pretty sure this was actually a really bold, creative choice by him. So he'd be like, oh, there's another sorry about that. He'd say something about the terrorist attacks and his alcoholism and like finding Mormonism or whatever. He was describing once, I think, like a nightmare he had while he was an alcoholic about some big black tentacle monster in the sky that was like feeding on his life force or something, and like something like that. And he'd say, and I saw this blackness in the sky, and its tentacles descended down into the city, and I looked up at it. And there'd be this long, long pause like this. And you really would think you needed to change the station, that something was wrong with either your radio or something had gone wrong with the broadcast. And then he'd come back, he'd go, and that's when I realized that Israel is our greatest ally. It was a real war on terror days, and everybody was really into that whole thing. My, how the tables have turned. I think Glenn's still an Israel guy. I haven't kept up with him. I did mature past where I was when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. I don't turn to my mom and say, Mom, I think Israel is our greatest ally. Although I did do things like that. I think I did. I was like a precocious kid, but in like a retarded AM radio way. Just like the dumbest possible thing you could possibly be. Just like the most annoying thing. I used to have really bright red hair too. I was like this gross, disgusting little creature running around talking about things I didn't understand. But to my credit, there are people in their middle age who are doing that right now. So it's not that bad. You know, it actually was a good time. I don't want to say too much bad about Glenn Beck, especially back in the day. You know, you look at the news now, you look and you see, okay, I saw so the fall of al-Assad in Syria, for example, and the leader of the rebel group is a current or former Al-Qaeda affiliate, something like that. And the U.S. State Department goes and has a little chat with him, and then I was reading a tweet quoting a news article where it said they took the $10 million bounty off his head after saying it sounded like he was being pretty pragmatic. And Russia is at war with Ukraine. They have bases in Syria. It's not clean cut. It's not the simple days. It's not the war on terror that I grew up with, where we're palling around with Al Qaeda guys now. You know, sometimes I long for it. I wake up, and I would encourage you to do this. You wake up, you go outside, and just pretend that it's 2003. Go outside, just go outside, smell the air, just take it in. Just think, we're at war with the bad guys. They're bad. They hate our freedom. We're good. There's democracy, and it's good. Democracy hasn't voted for gay marriage yet, so it's still okay. And it's the Muslims who are bad. Just you wake up with that attitude. You wake up and you think about that. And what you should really do, I know we got Christmas coming up. I want you to do this. Keep the war on terror in your heart. I know now we're friends with Al Qaeda guys fighting Assad, who was really a secular leader, by the way. He wasn't like the Ba'ath Party, or however you pronounce it, Ba'ath Party. I don't know. But that's fairly secular, I believe, unless I'm wrong. So don't worry about us palling around with an Al Qaeda guy who, through the force of militant Islam, overthrew a secular leader. That's complicated. I mean, we didn't like him because he was helping Russia. That's complicated. I don't want to think about that. I want to walk to Dunkin' Donuts. I want to listen to Glenn Beck. I think I got to do that on SoundCloud now if I want to. I don't know if he ever switched to podcasting. He made his own like website that was also like a TV show called like The Blaze TV or something. I'm getting sidetracked here. Anyway, you put in your earbuds. You walk to Dunkin' Donuts. You listen to Glenn Beck. Actually, what you should do, don't listen to modern Glenn Beck. I know he was on Tucker Carlson, and Tucker had an anti-Israel guy on recently talking about U.S. foreign policy. So maybe even Glenn Beck is waffling on this. I wonder. I do wonder about that. I'm curious. But that's not what this exercise is. This exercise I want you to do. And I want you to do this on Christmas Day, by the way. Christmas Day. Forget about your family or that. You're going to wake up. You're going to say, it's 2003. I'm going to go outside. Or put your earbuds in or whatever you have. Or don't put your earbuds in. Just blast it on the phone as you walk outside. Might be even better. You're going to look up maybe archive.org or something. You're going to get a broadcast of Glenn Beck, 2003, 2004, 2005. You're going to listen to that. You're going to be in that mindset. You're going to go to the Dunkin' Donuts, and you're not going to order at one of the kiosks with a touchpad That's bullshit. That's for Wawa only. You're going to order a donut and a coffee. You want to make sure that combined, your order through donuts or through the sugar and whatever coffee bullshit you're getting, you want the calories. This is just breakfast, but you want the calories to hit probably 3,000, 4,000. And then here's the thing. You're going to sit down in the Dunkin' Donuts. You're not going to take it and go. You're going to sit down. You're going to listen to Glenn. You should listen to the ad reads too. And you're going to keep the war on terror in your heart. That's what we need to be doing, especially at Christmas time. That's what's important. Keep the war on terror in your heart. All right, let's get to the first item today. Was it too many? I did a bunch of little dramatic pauses. They weren't as long as his. His were like crazy. His were worse than mine. His were worse than mine last episode. His were insane. No ums, though, because he was a pro. He's a real pro. All right, have you ever seen this channel, Soft White Underbelly? This has got to be one of my favorite YouTube channels. This is really one of the best. Soft White Underbelly, it's this guy, Mark Leta, and he goes out on like Skid Row. He has this like studio set up, and he gets the people to come in, and he interviews them, and it's sad. This. I'm not being ironic. This is actually a great channel. It's pretty amazing to see what's actually going on in the world. Some of these interviews are really, really, really incredible. But this one, I've got a very basic one here. Let me show you on the screen. Get started. Just let me put these people up here. You can see. So this one's called Fentanyl Addicted Couple, Peter and Crystal. And they look like a fentanyl addicted couple. If you're not, damn it, there's an If you're not watching, if you're just listening, it's a fentanyl addicted couple, and it shows. It shows. White folks, kind of got goofy haircuts in another life. Maybe Amish people. But in this life, and the one they landed in, fentanyl addicts. So I watch this channel all the time. I watch almost all of them. There's a lot of... One of my favorite things is he'll always be interviewing a black hooker. And he'll say, do you take black clients? And they always say no. It's one of their rules. They only see white and Latino guys. That always makes me laugh every single time. But that's not this video. This is a fentanyl addicted white couple. And there's a part here that really made me giggle. It was right in the beginning. Right in the beginning. I'll play it for you right now. All right, listen to this.
All right, Peter and Crystal. Peter and Crystal. Crystal, you've been here before, but last time you were here, you were with a guy named Jason.
Yeah.
What happened with Jason?
Jason went to prison for a year.
Okay, so it's the title of the video is that it's a couple. You have a man and a woman right here, and you think it's going to be how they're together, they're fighting through it together. It's a rough life, obviously, and they're trying to get through it together. But we open with, last time you were here, Crystal, you were with another fella. And this guy, he showed up to this interview. I mean, he's all fented out of his brain. But it's just so funny to me. I would love if this video starts like this, and you think it's going to be another drug interview. And instead the guy goes, he looks at her and he goes, who the hell is Jason? Crystal, what the fuck is he talking about? Crystal, what are you doing right now? Crystal, do you know how much you're embarrassing me right now? Do you know how embarrassing this is? I was here to talk about my fentanyl addiction. I'm not some fucking cuck, Crystal. Holy shit. It is bleak though. If you watch these, they're very, very bleak. Very, very bleak. But great channel. Everyone should watch Soft White Underbelly all the time. Everyone should watch it. It should be mandatory viewing whenever tens or hundreds of billions of dollars goes to Ukraine and Israel. Everyone should have to watch Soft White Underbelly. Should just be a requirement. I think that would be a good idea. You know what I'd like? I think maybe this channel needs, I like when you can hear a little bit of background noise. I really like shuffling papers. So I'm doing everything with links and in a browser and everything. I really wish I just had some papers to shuffle so you could hear just a little like me adjusting them against my desk or something as we move on. And it's like a little signal that we're going to change. Something like that. Could cover up the dead air too. Which again, we don't necessarily want to do. I also thought about maybe a fireplace crackle. Just constantly in the background, but I can't decide if that would be annoying. I guess it would be annoying, especially in headphones. I think it would get really, really annoying. All right, moving on. Moving on. There's an author. It goes by the name of Arx Han. Not a real name. He has a Substack. He actually has a novel out. He's an Asian guy. I believe he's Asian American, but I think he lives somewhere in Asia, maybe China right now. And he wrote a novel called Incel, which he did send me a copy of last year, and I was supposed to read and leave a review of on Amazon or something, and I never did. So I owe him a 5-star review somewhere. But he's got a Substack that's great. It's a Substack that's probably better than his fiction. Even though Incel's not terrible, I read about half of it. I just got distracted by other things. And he had a great article this week because he had the exact same reaction that I had to an article that was in the New York Times. It was this article called "The Disappearance of Literary Men Should Worry Everyone." And his headline here, "The New York Times capitulates and finally admits that we were right about androgenic fiction. Overton Oscillations and the opening of the aesthetic Overton window." So he's got a long essay. He writes very, very long essays. And it's very well written. It's about this terrible New York Times piece. Caption, "Read this dog shit here. Don't pay for it though. We don't pay for anything here. We use an extension called Bypass Paywalls Clean." Search for that. Okay, so he's referencing this essay. I'll get into the essay itself in the New York Times before I get to what he has to say about it. But it's basically about what I think everybody knows, which is that men don't really read fiction. And that does cause issues right now. If you walk into a bookstore and you look at the fiction section and you're a heterosexual male, you know that you're not welcome. There's nothing there that's aimed for you. Even if you look at classics or something, you'll see the covers and just everything. It's meant for the female audience, which is fine. That's capitalism. They're the ones who are buying the books, which is why it ended up that way. All right, let me read a quote from this main article here. All right, I'll just read the first 2 paragraphs of the beginning. "Over the past 2 decades, literary fiction has become a largely female pursuit. Novels are increasingly written by women and read by women. In 2004, real Glenn Beck years. In 2004, about half the authors on the New York Times fiction bestseller list were women and about half men. That's right. That's War on Terror men. They were big readers, and books were meant for them. Simpler times. This year, the list looks to be more than three-quarters women. According to multiple reports, women readers now account for about 80% of fiction sales. 80%! It's a feminized world. We cut deals with Al Qaeda. Remember when things were pure? You could read Tuesdays with Maury or whatever. It was masculine. I see the same pattern in the creative writing program where I've taught for 8 years. About 60% of our applications come from women, and some cohorts in our program are entirely female. Who's writing this? Who's writing this? David J. Morris. So a man is writing this. I wonder how often he tries to fuck them. Especially with this pandering bullshit piece he wrote. I'm going to say 100% of the time he teaches a class, he tries to fuck one of the kids. College kids. He's not a monster. I'm not accusing him of being a monster. All right. I see the same pattern in the creative writing program where I've taught for 8 years. About 60% of our applications come from women. Some cohorts in our program are entirely female. Just read that. When I was a graduate student in a similar program about 20 years ago, when Glenn Beck was reigning, the cohorts were split fairly evenly by gender. As Eamon Dolan, a vice president and executive director at Simon & Schuster, told me recently, the young male novelist is a rare species. Well, what's wrong? Could it be that in the college environment, in the environment where you learn the habits that are going to make you someone who's interested in reading difficult fiction, men are not welcome? Could it be something like that? Could there be something later in this very piece that would maybe have our answer? Well, Arx Han has something to say about this. And I'd encourage you to skip reading the New York Times piece and just skip to what he has to say. He's got a quote from the article. But if you care about the health of our society, especially in the age of Donald Trump and the distorted conceptions of masculinity he helps to foster, the decline and fall of literary men should worry you. And then this is coming from Arx Han himself. In a short, poorly argued, and even more poorly thought out piece, the author name drops Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate, and Donald Trump, and essentially frames their appeal as secondary to the decline of men and literary fiction. The solution? Can we guess the solution? All right, quoting again. The fortunes of men and women are intertwined. This is why, for example, I make sure that my male students read The Handmaid's Tale. What's the solution for masculinity? Read The Handmaid's Tale. If you have a stomach ache, you know what's really good for that? You go open a toilet bowl, and when you see all the shit floating inside, you get down on your knees with a big spoon, and you eat it all up. That's what this piece says. This is what they think of us. This is what quote-unquote literary males who teach creative writing programs and try to fuck their students have to say. This guy, he goes up in front of his class of all female students. He folds his arms and he has a little smirk on his face and he says, if male students were here, I would make them read The Handmaid's Tale. And he slyly looks around the room. He sees who reacts. He's scoping out the situation. You just know. You just know with this guy what's happening. All right. We can move on. See, this is where I'd shuffle the papers. I want to shuffle the papers here. It's been a big week for women. Next story's about women too. So talk about missing the mark. Another New York Times hit from December 15th. The trouble began when hashtag MeToo became hashtag Church2. Ooh. Ooh, wow. I think we've got another brilliant take here. So, this David French, this fucking retard. David French, speaking of France, see what happened to that lady? 50 guys in her town. Her husband was drugging and raping her. That was crazy. She's got a right to be pissed off. I don't know what David French's problem is. I don't know. But the point of this is that when Me Too started, Christians and conservatives, they were happy because it was exposing the hypocrisy of Hollywood. Me Too happens, and it's all Hollywood guys. It's all people who donate to feminist causes, the Democrat Party, or whatever. It turns out, shocking, absolutely shocking, they're the ones abusing women. And it's true. People like me did delight in seeing that. But this article says, oh, but then what happened is that it turned out there were Christian figures abusing women too. So they all had to shut up, and they're all wrong. And this is like a perfectly wrong understanding of what happened. Everybody knows that religious figures in power abuse those around them. Because everybody knows that people in power, as a rule, as a group, not every individual, of course, but as a rule, abuse those around them. This is why women abuse babies. They're smaller and weaker than them. So women who are left alone with babies abuse babies. Right? Boy Scout leaders, teachers, pastors, priests. They're bigger than someone, not just physically, whether it's a teenage girl, a young woman they work with, a child. So, of course, when people have that power and opportunity, bad things happen. But everybody knows that. Everybody knows that happens in every situation. What was funny about Me Too is it was guys with this tremendous power in Hollywood, and with their power, they were supposedly championing these causes, when everyone who looked at that, who has a worldview that comes from, say, something like Christianity, or just from their traditions, or just from what their parents taught them growing up, would know that that can't possibly be. They would know that some millionaire producer who can make women famous is probably not going to treat them well. And so when that all turned out to be true, and these people were exposed as hypocrites, it was amazing. So when it comes out after that, just like it had been coming out for generations before that, that there were issues in the church as well with abuse, well, it's not the same thing. That's just the normal cultural background noise. When it's Hollywood people, it's something else. And hopefully it will get them to shut the hell up about things that they were hypocrites about. But of course it didn't. Anyway, he concludes his gay little piece here. I think it's at the end. Here we go. And so here we are with the nation about to be led by a man found liable for sexual abuse, with key members of his chosen senior team beset by their own gross scandals, voted into office on the strength of overwhelming white evangelical support. And all too many Christians still celebrate his victory and their indispensable support as a triumph of good over evil. Okay, well, first of all, in Glenn Beck times, War on Terror times, which were better, we had George W. Bush openly talking about Jesus while he campaigned. And it was a big thing. He would mention it in debates. That was really the peak of evangelical support. Trump is not that. Sure, there were people who would say they were evangelical and they were voting for Trump for evangelical reasons. But really, they were voting for him for secular reasons. Because secular whites are voting for him too. And the evangelical whites, it's not a religious thing. It's not like before. This is the wrong interpretation. The only thing that happened is the assassination attempt. It did make that argument very appealing for the minority who were saying that Trump was ordained by God or something, despite being a flawed person. That argument did get a lot more appealing when, I think, as Joe Rogan said, God voted for him in Pennsylvania when that happened, when he got shot in the ear. But he's really not a religious candidate, and it's not a religious support thing. Christians happen to be voting for him because of where they live, because of what society has done to their demographic, but it's not a Christian thing. So it's another piece that sucks my ass, that's gay. But anyway, like I said, big week for women. Women, congratulations. You got on the board. You got school shooter. Now, what I like to do when I'm out with my friends is get very drunk and go on rants. One of my favorite rants to go on is like when women say they're depressed or whatever. I would always say, I will believe women are depressed when they start shooting up schools. I'll believe it's a real depression and not just a cry for attention when they start shooting up schools. And God damn it, congratulations, you did it. Take a bow. Ladies, you're on the board. You got one. This is, by all accounts, a biological woman, a girl. Some are saying 15. I think somewhere else I read 17. I don't know. This AP story, I think, happened when it broke. It says 15. But she got on the board. She got on the board. Supposedly she had a manifesto where she mentioned Radfem Hitler. But I think that was fake. I don't know if it was fake, but I think it was. I used to like Radfem Hitler. I thought she was retarded, but I thought she was a pretty decent sparring partner compared to others for some of the more based accounts out there. I thought she was fine. I had to stop following or paying attention when she unironically supported Kamala Harris. You can't be some kind of radical and support the candidate of Visa and MasterCard. I think that's a quote. I'm mangling it, but it's a quote from Curtis Yarvin, I think. So you can't be an edgelord account, even a left-wing edgelord account, and then unironically support someone like Kamala Harris. So I did have to drop her for that. But whether or not she inspired this school shooting, I think the last two New York Times articles we read shine some light into what's going on. I wonder if this will be a trend. Probably not. I think you have to be pretty extraordinary to be a school shooter, especially if you're a woman. You know, it's kind of like Joan of Arc. Like, it did happen. It did happen, but is it really going to happen that much? It's notable for how unusual it is. There is something about evil here. It's like the Glenn Beck thing in his dream. In Glenn Beck's dream, his tentacle monster, alcoholism that can only be defeated with the power of Joseph Smith. There is something with that tentacle monster. I do think about the guy writing this article about how there aren't any men in fiction and how the answer is to, I guess, read The Handmaid's Tale. I do think about that guy, and you know, it's one kind of evil because he clearly just wants to fuck the students. And he can't get control of that, and it's like, oh, it's whatever. I mean, how bad could it be? They're adult students, he's an adult, they're adults. Really, who gives a shit? Is it really that bad? So he chooses not to have self-control, and, you know, art suffers because people come through his class and they don't really learn anything. He's a retard. It's just like a very mild little evil, right? But then it contributes to this whole attitude in the whole culture, and it leads to this retarded kid shooting up the school. It's like one of the little tentacles, but if you follow it all the way back, it goes to Glenn Beck's monster. All right, let's cleanse the palate a little bit. It's time to cleanse the palate. I've got a little treat for everyone. Just a little treat. Found this on Reddit. Okay, it's a lady. There's a parrot that can't fly, so she runs around with it. Now, the lady doing this, she's quite overweight. The lady doing this.
Are you out of breath, baby girl?
So the parrot comes back up to the camera, and the woman who's holding the camera says, "You out of breath, baby girl?" But the person who is running around the parrot is this big fat lady. And it's like, hey, the parrot can't fly. Lady, you can't fly. Lady, are you out of breath? Lady, you look like you're out of breath. I gotta watch this again. Let's watch this again. Gotta see it. Oh my god. She does this turn. She does like a little loop. She's...
You out of breath, baby girl?
You out of breath, baby girl? She's gotta be talking to the lady, not talking to the parrot. You out of breath, baby girl? Baby girl, you out of breath? Alright. Okay, see, women are actually lovely. They're adorable. They run with parrots, completely unaware of their physical limitations. See, it's a sweet thing. It's a very female thing. She's worried about the parrot more than herself, more than her own health. She worries about the parrot. Alright, here's another fun one. Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who I find quite likable these days. After he dropped out of the race, he became extremely likable. And here's a fun one that he did. There was something called the Kids for Cash scandal. And if you haven't heard of this, there was a judge, I think this was in Pennsylvania. Yeah, it was Pennsylvania. There was a judge who was overseeing juvenile cases. And there was a facility, a detention facility for juvenile offenders. And this judge was throwing the book at kids, just giving them these long sentences, just really, really giving it to them, making them stay in prison in the detention center for long periods of time, unusually long. And it turned out he was taking kickbacks from the detention center. The detention center gets paid by the government for how many kids are inside. And so they were letting the judge see a little of that action. So it was a whole thing. It was a massive scandal. The judge went to prison, as he should. And Biden decided to grant clemency for that. Title here, Biden granted clemency to the Kids for Cash judge. The White House didn't consider the case specifics. The White House commuted the sentence of the judge at the center of a notorious Kids for Cash scandal without considering the specifics of the case beyond whether it fit into a broad set of criteria, an administration official told Politico on Friday. President Joe Biden this week granted clemency to the former Pennsylvania judge, Michael Conahan, as part of a mass commutation covering nearly 1,500 people who had been released on home confinement during the COVID pandemic. Conahan was convicted in 2011 of funneling juveniles to for-profit detention centers in exchange for more than $2 million in kickbacks. He was sentenced to more than 17 years in prison after pleading guilty to racketeering conspiracy charges. So 17 years in prison. That was in 2011. Wow, 2011 was actually a long time ago. But he should have had a few more years left. His sentence was commuted by Biden. Hey, who hasn't taken kickbacks? I wonder if Hunter had a hand in this. I wonder if Hunter was thinking about Burisma. I wonder if Hunter said, "Hey, Pop, listen. I was a rotten kid. Sometimes these little bastards need to go to jail. But you know how it is. People want to be seen as merciful. So some wheels got greased. So these kids could be put where they belong. You know what a little hellraiser I was, Dad. I could have used a detention center. We got to let this guy go." Do you think that? I think that's a strong possibility. I think that might be what happened here. That's just a personal opinion. Do with that what you will. I'm not making any accusations. That's a personal opinion. Just a personal opinion. Fine. All right. I hope you're not sick of kvetching about the New York Times, because that's all we do here. This one from Michelle Goldberg. The Great Capitulation. And we've got a black and white photo. Donald Trump here. Very dramatic. Very dramatic, Michelle. Michelle is upset about the state of #TheResistance. That's what this is about. All her allies, it's not like they've abandoned her, but you can tell their heart's not in it like it was. Quoting here, at a press conference at Mar-a-Lago on Monday, Donald Trump described recent visits from Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, Sergey Brin, a co-founder of Google, and other tech barons. In the first term, everyone was fighting me, he said. In this term, everyone wants to be my friend. For once, he wasn't exaggerating. So there's a line of thought here, particularly with these tech guys. It's that they got to the top, they won the capitalism game, but then they found out there was another game. They won the capitalism game, but they had regulators breathing down their necks in a way that they weren't in other industries. It's like you get to the top level of something, and then you find out there's another game being played. And in the real echelons of power, you're being frozen out. I believe that's what happened with Peter Thiel. I think he saw it very early. Maybe he saw what would happen before their ascendancy, even. I think it happened with Elon Musk. Elon Musk got to the very top of the game, became the richest man in the world, and found himself frozen out of everything. Found himself with, despite making an electric car company that's changing the world or already has changed the world in terms of energy expenditure, in terms of greenhouse gases, all these causes that supposedly the government is using its power to promote and shift in this direction. Despite doing all of that, he found himself being frozen out. He found articles being written about Tesla that were about some random low-level employee working on the assembly line saying the N-word to another employee. And that's the big article. That's the national news story being written about your company. And these tech guys found out that there are other echelons of power. It's not good enough to be the CEO of Facebook or Google, and it's not good enough to play along with the FBI when they tell you to turn over all the data. You think, oh, okay, well, there's this other game being played. Well, I'll give the government everything they want, and then I'll have a say. No. They're being frozen out of all that. And that's why you have these figures coming in. They're not exactly kissing the ring. Well, maybe they are. But most dramatically with Elon, having spent $250 million, supposedly, to get Trump elected, they're making a new alliance. Their natural friends in the Democratic Party refuse to sell them a high enough level of influence, so they're going somewhere else for it. They became enemies. That seems to me what's going on. Seems to me to be what's going on. All right, quoting from the article again. Following January 6th, Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook co-founder, suspended Trump's account. But last month at Mar-a-Lago, the Wall Street Journal reported Zuckerberg stood, hand on heart, as, quote, the club played a rendition of the national anthem sung by imprisoned, end quote, January 6 defendants. Parentheses. It's not clear if Zuckerberg knew what he was listening to. He's pledged $1 million donation to Trump's inauguration, as did the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and Jeff Bezos' company Amazon, which will also stream the inauguration on its video platform. Zuckerberg went on Rogan this year, I believe it was this year, and talked openly about how they should not have killed the Hunter Biden laptop story. They were pressured to do it by the government, and it was inappropriate. So it was no surprise, if you read the tea leaves just a little bit, that Zuckerberg was shifting sides, maybe not completely publicly, but it's not the same Zuck. He played the game with the FBI, he did everything they said, and he's still facing endless scrutiny. If not from the government itself, maybe he is. I haven't looked into it, but Certainly, he's portrayed very negatively in a way that in the way that the powerful are not portrayed so negatively in other contexts in media. Other kinds of powerful people. All right, let's move on. Another downstream effect of the Trump victory. Hollywood Reporter says that Disney pulls transgender storyline from Pixar's Win or Lose streaming series. The original animated show about a co-ed high school team debuts on Disney Plus in February. Pixar's original animated series Win or Lose will no longer include a transgender storyline in a later episode, The Hollywood Reporter has learned. The series follows a co-ed middle school softball team named the Pickles. Ooh, very unfortunate name. There's a transgender storyline. The series follows a co-ed middle school softball team named the Pickles in the week leading up to their championship game. Each of the 8 episodes center on the off-the-field life of a character and their point of view, whether it be a player, a parent, a coach, or an umpire. A spokesperson for Disney confirmed that the story arc was removed and provided the following statement to The Hollywood Reporter. Quote, "When it comes to animated content for a younger audience, we recognize that many parents would prefer to discuss certain subjects with their children on their own terms and timeline." You're kidding. You gotta be kidding me. Parents want to talk about these things with their children on their own terms and timeline? But I want Disney writers to do it for me. Is this Trump again? Is this Trump again? Is this Trump's fault? Let's jump back to Michelle's article, Michelle Goldberg. Let's go back to her article. There's a quote I really want to put in here. She says, "Collectively, all these elite decisions to bow to Trump make it feel like the air is going out of the old liberal order. In its place will be something more ruthless and Nietzschean." You'll have to excuse me. I'm getting an erection. Let me calm down here. Next one, that was a dramatic pause. It was intentional, I swear. It's not because the next story is really retarded. Actually, it is. This one I love. This is my favorite story of the week. Alabama woman receives nation's 3rd pig kidney transplant. The patient, Tawana Looney, was in better health than previous recipients, and her case could signal progress towards solving the organ supply shortage. Now, isn't this just the way the elites, if they need kidneys, if they need adrenochrome, they just kill a kid? Do you think if Hillary Clinton needs a kidney, she's getting a pig kidney? No. No way. If you're a Clinton, Biden, Bush, one of these masters of the universe, you get a real human kidney from a kid who was tortured so that their adrenaline was high, so you get a little rush when they put it in. All right, let's read. A 53-year-old Alabama woman with kidney failure who waited 8 years for an organ transplant has received a kidney harvested from a genetically modified pig. NYU Langone health surgeons announced on Tuesday. The patient, Tawana Looney, blah, 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 blah. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing about this. If it doesn't work, if this does not work, this is going to be really tough. Can you imagine you're like the nephew of this lady she passes away, and someone comes up to you, a neighborhood person, and they say, "Hey, how's your aunt doing these days?" And you go, "Oh well, she didn't make it. You know, she had kidney problems. She didn't make it. She didn't make it." There's a word I want you to see here that the New York Times uses. The patient, Tawana Looney, went into surgery just before Thanksgiving. She was in better health than others who have received porcine organs to date and left the hospital 11 days after the procedure. That is a rough word, porcine. That is rough, buddy. That is a terrible one. Okay, so let's go back into the scene. You're the nephew. You're talking to someone in the neighborhood. You go, "Oh, well, actually, she didn't make it. My Aunt Tawana, she didn't make it." And he says, the fellow you're talking to, he goes, "Oh, well, what happened?" And you say, "Well, you know, she was waiting for a kidney. She was waiting for a kidney." And he says, My God, she was waiting for a kidney. Well, how long did she wait?" And you say, 8 years. She waited 8 years for a kidney. And the guy says, Jesus Christ, 8 years for a kid. I mean, healthcare in this country. You know, he starts doing a Luigi Mangione thing. And you go, "Well, actually, she did get it. She got it." And the guy said, "Oh, and she still passed. What happened? Did she reject the kidney? What happened?" He's like, yeah, it was a rejection. It didn't work out. Well, was there anything wrong? I mean, why did she reject the kid? Was it just too late? 8 years? And you say, "Well," actually, it was, it was a kidney, but it was kind of a, new kind of kidney. It wasn't exactly the one that, yeah, it wasn't. And the guy says, "Well, what do you mean, a new kind of like an artificial kidney? I know there's artificial hearts. They made an artificial kidney. She had an artificial kidney, and it didn't work out. It's a new technology." And you say, "Well, it wasn't." Well, you could say it was artificial, but it was really it was a porcine kidney. She had a porcine one. It was a porcine kidney. And the guy goes, porcine kidney? Is that I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term. A porcine kidney? What's, what does porcine mean? That's a type of kidney, maybe like a blood type, or, and you say, "Well, no, it was a kidney from a pig. It was a kidney from a genetically modified pig. The porcine kidney. Porcine kidney she had. Didn't make it. Didn't make it." I mean, that is a rough conversation to have. That is a rough one. If it all works out, fine. If it all works out, that's great. You will take the vax, you will take the porcine organs, and you will eat the bugs, by the way. You want fresh human kidneys? You got to join the elite. That's why Bezos, that's why Sergey Brin, that's why Zuckerberg, that's why they're donating to the Trump administration. That's why. They got shut out of this elite, and they're seeing what's coming. These are guys who look ahead. They see what's coming down the line. They see what's coming out of the new biolab, the new kidney virus that's coming. And they're like, "Oh, no. Nope. I am not taking a porcine kidney. I'm going to be in the elite. I'm going to have real human kidneys." Okay, this next one I shouldn't even show. This next one, I don't even know if I can do this. Okay, sorry if that just blasted you. This next one, so we all get the X algorithm that we deserve. Someone told that to me once, and I've been a believer in that. I can only play the music for a couple seconds, or YouTube's going to take this down. Copyrighted music. But just to set the scene here, if you're just listening, this is a young man with Down syndrome, and he's practicing his nunchuck moves. And The X user here has edited in an animated flashy swastika. All right, I'm going to mute it after a couple seconds. But hero to the end of the night. This is X now, by the way. This is what I get on X. I don't know about you. Oh, if you were just listening, that's fine. If you're watching, I think I turned off the video for a second. Hold on, let's go again. Let's go again. I'll show you here. For a hero to the end of the night. He's gotta be strong, and he's gotta be fast, and he's gotta be fresh from the fight. But this is all X gives me these days. That's if I started a brand new X account for this podcast, and I followed just a few people, and I went to the For You tab, and this is what I got. So it is funny when they're like, why don't advertisers... Where are all the advertisers? Why aren't there Cheerios ads showing on the same screen as our recommendations? I don't know what's happening. Okay. Little palette cleanser there. All right, I was going to get to more today. I think I'm going to cut a lot out. A lot of the news items I had. Who cares? A Romanian coup. Fuck Romania. Who cares? The point is, if you're a NATO country, you're part of the empire. Your president will be who we say your president is. Dorks. Ann Selzer, she's kvetching because Trump is suing her. Ann Selzer is the woman who said that Harris was going to win Iowa by 4 points, and Trump won it by 13 points. Do you remember for 5 minutes there was this little wave of retardation? They said, oh, women are going to come out in droves like never before. Of course, Trump won white women. And the election is going to swing. So she was wrong by 17 points. Okay, that's not that important. Let's finish today with some New Jersey drones, because this is one, a lot of the time I'm giving you some basic facts. Just the facts here, folks. Very little opinion. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, it's almost all opinion. But I think I've got some real insight into this last story here. This last one about drones in New Jersey. Okay, I'm a good New Jersey boy. I grew up in New Jersey. Okay, New York Times. Guest essay. Very New York Times heavy, I know, but that's just the nature of the beast. All the news is downstream from the New York Times, just the way it is. So I could read, this from AP, this from the Washington Post, this from the New York Times, but they're all just rewriting what the New York Times writes. And the opinion essays that get published in the other ones are just ones that were, they're all gay, but ones that were too shitty to go in the New York Times. That's why we're so New York Times heavy. Anyway, this one, the Great Drone Freakout is coming. So this guy, Alex Kingsbury. The public has already been given the government's best answers to the latest panic over mysterious lights in the sky over New Jersey. Many Americans simply don't like a mundane answer. Fixed-wing piloted aircraft, smaller planes, hobbyist drones. That implies they are rubes at best and paranoid at worst. Even assurances from New Jersey officials in particular have done little to quiet the current public clamor. Perhaps that's unsurprising for a state where, like so many other parts of the country, people were duped by Orson Welles' radio play War of the Worlds 86 years ago this fall. Perhaps that's a cheap shot at the Garden State, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you get it. So there's drones in the sky over New Jersey. The globo homo freaks at the New York Times don't want you to take it seriously, but our boy Rogan's got someone here, okay? Rogan's got a little insight here, and I've got a little insight, okay? So Rogan has this retard, this ex-Navy pilot, who's a big UFO guy. He does the rounds. He saw UFOs or whatever. I didn't even really listen to this one. I own a MUFON hat, by the way.
Yeah.
They'd be able to tune into that and figure it out.
Okay,
right?
listen to this.
So how come no one's been arrested? How come no one's been caught? How come they haven't, tracked these things down to the source?
Yeah, so there's a lot of good questions there. Let me back up by starting with the fact that this started about 2 years ago, at least. So
But not like this.
a little bit like this.
Really?
So,
In this volume?
not in this volume. That's the differentiator right there. But
That's a differentiator right there, not in this volume. But anyway, okay, you get it. It's 2 years ago. This started 2 years ago. Drones in New Jersey, UFOs in New Jersey. All right. I think I know what they're doing. I've connected some dots here, and I know what they've been doing, all right? I got a story here from 2023. It's going to shed some light on it. A New Jersey mystery. Who dumped hundreds of pounds of pasta and why? The police and public works employees responded after, quote, 15 wheelbarrow loads, end quote, of pasta were dumped in mounds along a creek in Old Bridge, New Jersey. Okay, you wonder what those drones have been doing? Huh? Nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about the pasta being dumped in the woods. If the drones are innocent, then where is the pasta coming from? Did you think about that? All right, folks. Remember to keep the war on terror in your heart. Bye-bye.